2024 was the most audacious year of my entire life. We started this year with a bold reclamation. The tone of the beginning of this year was very much so, let's fucking go, as I had rescued myself from a situation where I felt trapped and where I felt like I didn't have control or conviction, and deeply had to reclaim myself for myself. And in the process, the biggest lesson I learned this year was the thing that I needed to save myself from was myself. And these are like the uncomfortable things that aren't cutesy or tied up in a bow to admit on camera, but are the real ass human shit that cannot be roboticized. Like, the thing that I had to fight the most against was myself and the beliefs in my head and the versions of me that allowed myself to feel trapped or out of control by things outside of me. And so I took a deep, hard look and plunged into my internal narratives and what I believed was possible this year to go after what I had always wanted to do. The thing about this year is, while I can present to you now a clear picture of shiny successes and rattle them off one by one, it would be nothing without the context of what was built in the years before this that allowed this year to happen. I've talked with my friends before about this, that some years don't need a recap. Some years are lesson years or rebuilding years, but I gotta say, 2024 really freaking needs a recap from me because we did it. We did it. We did all the things. I am so freaking proud of myself that I did everything I said I was going to do this year. Everything. And I set massive goals this year and it was exhausting as fuck, but I did it and I'm deeply proud of myself for that. And I also acknowledge that I would not have been able to do everything I did this year without the years of compounded growth before this and the years of mundane lessons and healing and things that allowed me to get to this place. And I hope not every year is like this year. Like, I kind of enjoy the ebbs and flows of letting there be filler years and recalibration years, and then letting there be years where you come to this like fruition of being able to express yourself from that place. And this year exhausted the heck out of me, and so I pray for no years like this ever again. But it also showed me my limits and it gave me visibility to my capacity in a way that I never would have learned if I wouldn't have tried. And here's what we did. Here were the goals that I said that I would do and that I successfully accomplished, which were 3 massive things. I wanted to triple the size of Glowin' and Growin', which we did. We tripled the event size, we tripled the team size. It was a massive success externally. We'll talk about the underbelly of that later. The second goal was to execute the music video of my dreams. We've been talking about this for so long. I have been writing this music video, producing it for 3 years, and this was finally the year where we filmed it. We filmed all 11 scenes this year. As of a couple weeks ago, we're officially wrapped. The music video is set to release in January. And the third goal was to move. I wanted to move into my dream apartment. We know I've told the story before about being homeless and journaling and praying to have a home that I could like cook in, and that was years and years ago. But when I was journaling back then, I was picturing and visualizing this apartment that I'm in now, that we did. And so those 3 goals, Glowin' and Growin', the music video, and moving, were massive, massive, massive undertakings that can be so simple to rattle off at a list like that, but each required hundreds and hundreds of hours of work and dedication to bring to fruition. So while the shiny external successes are fun to portray, I really find it far more fascinating to talk about the failures and the lessons that were learned along the way. And so with all of that, what it took was finding the utmost confidence in myself and also the utmost humility, where I think the biggest recognition of this year was learning that I cannot do it all alone. I think this is where like all the lessons brought me to in the greatest way was the humility that I can't do it all alone, especially with someone like me who I've always had big, big, big visions and this desire to make like great impacts and like give to the world. And I have this like massive engine of energy running through me of wanting to like create and execute, but my visions are too big for just me. And so this is as it relates to other humans and team building and collaboration as much as it is related to God, because we had the biggest coming to Jesus moment of my entire life this year that showed me that I don't have to carry it alone. I've been talking to God so much recently and realizing that God doesn't want me to carry it alone, and all this weight of emotional turbulence or trauma or things that we carry in our bodies, like I heard God say that, like, I don't have to carry all that alone. Like, let God carry some of that with us. And so, like, even as we keep moving forward and I'll keep having more visions and I'll keep wanting to execute bigger and bigger things, like, I have to humble myself to recognize that I need to rely on God to bring these big, beautiful visions to life. And I think that's what ruined me this year in the points of the biggest burnout, was that I had been so closed in, fighting to reclaim my voice and fighting to prove that I could do it after spending last year constantly inundated with the verbiage that I couldn't and that I wasn't capable, and that verbiage was coming from something outside of me. But I have realized along the way that what allowed that to happen was that my internal narrative was reaffirming that choice along the way. And so in the effort to prove myself and my capabilities this year, I realized that that's a very, very poor approach to do anything, because there's no cap, there's no limit to like how far you can push yourself to prove that you can do something. And then it also falls incredibly empty on the other side. And so what I learned, I think, first and foremost through Glowing and Growing, because that was the first half of this year that we were like tripling the size of it and growing it so big. Like, I have been so fighting to prove that I can do it and I am capable. And we did. And we did it. We pulled it off and it was beautiful and I'm so grateful. But it was also such an at what cost type of thing, because I died. My body shut down. I put in so many hundreds of hours of work on that vision that my body literally shut down, and I had to spend like weeks healing after that vision got brought to life. And that was very much so where the coming to Jesus moment came to play, where I realized that I couldn't do it alone, and I needed to reevaluate where things were coming from and like what my priorities are. And fighting to prove my worth or go after all the goals for the sake of going after it felt really empty on me, because at the end of the day, we did it. We accomplished everything we set out to do, but I couldn't feel it. I couldn't feel it inside. And I think in August is when I realized that I have been trying to do it for the wrong reasons. And I needed to come back to the remembrance that it was about the bigger purpose and about the bigger vision of like where God was calling me to go and who God is calling me to be and how God is calling me to create through these visions. And I don't think God wants me to burn myself out and to go to the absolute max, or it's not about being the biggest or the best. It's about like the core essence of why we're creating in the first place. Why are we executing these visions? And it's not to be the most popular or to be the best. It's to make the impact that like we uniquely are designed to make in this lifetime. And so I feel that by the time it came to August and I had spent so much of the year fighting to prove that I was capable and prove that I could do what I set out to do, it crashed and burned me to the ground to a point of humility where I had to recognize that it wasn't about that anymore. That like the true deep soul fulfillment was going to come from me surrendering to listen to where God was calling me to go. So the other big vision this year was the music video project. This was the music video project of my dreams that I had been writing for 3 years, producing for 2, and we spent all of this year filming it. And it's a story that I'm going to elaborate on in a different segment a little bit later. It's a story that's so near and dear and special to my heart, and like a deeply profound, impactful concept and storyline that I happened to find the greatest team members on the face of the planet to bring to life with me. And we went on a journey this year of shooting these scenes. And there are so many behind the scenes moments of, you know, finding the team for the project and things not working out and getting no's and getting rejections and getting failures. And like there was so many roadblocks to this vision, but there was this like fire inside of me that needed to bring it to life. And I feel so grateful for the long game and the patience that God graced me with to sustain the vision in a way that allowed the right pieces to fill in at the right time. And once we finally, I had no idea how I was gonna fly a team of people to San Diego and film the scenes in San Diego, but I knew I needed the ocean. And so I still don't know how we made that work, but we made it work. And in May, we went to San Diego and started filming the music video, and the rest of the scenes were shot the rest of this year in Denver. But the other thing that happened was in April, my world crashed and burned, and I had to learn that my dad had a health diagnosis that was getting surgery when we were supposed to go to San Diego, and all of this happened in the course of weeks, that I had to pick myself up off the ground and still find a way to execute the project of our dreams that I believed in its impact at the same time. And I think the point is that there's been so many failures and so many roadblocks to every single vision that I have attempted to bring to life this year. And these visions that I've been trying to bring to life this year, that I did bring to life this year, that I'm currently bringing to life this year, are so special to my soul. And I think there's something that happens when you care so deeply about something, so profoundly. It almost has you questioning your existence and attaching your worth or your care to the success of these projects. And I think it's been something I've been navigating this year, is discerning where I end and where my visions begin, and discerning where maybe I need to create a little bit more separation between those things, because I've heard that attaching your self-worth to your art is not healthy. Jury's still out on that one. I think when you are making a project that you care about so deeply, I've heard studies that it almost has you procrastinating it that much longer. And I'm curious for myself if that's why I spent the past 3 years ruminating and preparing and planning for everything that I was doing this year, because it's almost that much more intimidating when you're executing something that you care about so greatly. There's more risk involved, I think. Because if you fail, you're failing at something that you deeply care about. And obviously there's no such thing as failure, but our brains play these tricks on us where I think we prevent ourselves from going after the thing because we're so worried about what will happen to our identity after we find out who we become in the process. And that's the thing, is you don't find out who you are until you enter the process yourself and go through the motions to figure out who you become on the other side. And you can't mental map your way to that. You can't foreshadow or see or even visualize, because there is no training ground the real thing of putting yourself in the game and actually taking the actions to move towards your visions. And so we get intimidated, or we put it off, or we spend too much time in the planning or preparing phase to I think prevent ourselves from pain in a certain way. And in a way, it was a very freaking painful process of executing all these visions that I cared about so much this year, because it felt so raw and exposing. I felt exposed as fuck this year. I still do, because I'm still in the final grounds of some of these projects. Because I'm this is actually my heart. This is actually my soul. This is actually the direction I want to create in. And it's intimidating as fuck, because you're expressing the real you. And that's been the most beautiful lesson though, because it's also the greatest gift, is the exposing painfulness of putting yourself in the game, because it calls you so much freaking higher and you have so much more skin in the game then. You are enrolled in your vision. You are invested in the long game of where this is taking you all. And I think that was the biggest lesson as well, is that the game's not over yet. This isn't the end all be all. And I think it's also scary to bring your visions to life, because you wonder, once you complete it, what's next? who will I be? Because if so much of my identity has been wrapped up in these projects, like, who will I be once I release it to the world? Where will my heart go? Like, where does all this energy, like, I always describe it as like a phantom limb syndrome of like, if you've been putting energy and energy and energy into this thing and then you choose to release it in the world of your own conviction, like, where does all the energy go moving forward? And that's the beautiful thing, is we hear artists all the time talk about like the ending is the beginning and death and rebirth. And this is, I think, why we live these cycles so much, because we're constantly experiencing it on a visceral level. But like, we have to familiarize ourselves with the feelings of death and rebirth and get so fucking comfortable with death and rebirth, because I mean, I'm always gonna be deep and existential as fuck, but I'm like, I think that's the inherent nature of a creative project, is it's like constant death and rebirth, constant grief and release and moving forward. And that's always been my mantra, and now we keep moving forward. So here at the closing of the year, of the biggest lessons and the most audacious visions, where we freaking went after it and we learned and we got humbled and we like moved along the way, like, and now we keep moving forward, like, and now we get to see where we grow from here. And now we get to stand on the ground of all that we created this year to choose who we become next, and have that like wisdom and that elevation like built up within us, like standing on the ground of everything that we created in the past year, to carry forward into a new chapter, into a fresh start, into a new beginning, where we're not completely leaving everything behind, but we're standing on the ground of the wisdom that we created through who we became by trying and putting ourselves out there, so that we can grow even more, with even more familiarity and comfortability and tools underneath our feet to carry forward into the next iteration of our projects. And you might know where you're going, you might not, but we get to continuously uncover and unfold who we get to become from here. And I think the really important part is to stay alive. I talk about this subject a lot, and it's something that I constantly wrestle with, because I am always thinking existential thoughts, but like, we don't know why we're here. We don't know the context, the greater context of the universe. And we can pretend to know in all the things, but we have limited brains. We are humans. We are just humans. And so we can't know what God knows. We can't see the full picture. And so we have to trust in the full picture and surrender some of that control and be okay with not knowing why we exist, but also taking control of choosing to create meaning in our life and choosing the directions that we uniquely get to take as a human, because nothing is guaranteed, nothing is promised. We do not know how or when we're gonna wake up, or what's gonna happen next, what will happen tomorrow, what will happen next year. I can't tell you exactly what 2025 will bring, but I can tell you that we have control over our intentions and who we choose to be in every moment, and having the courage to go after what your heart is actually calling you to do. Because I think I find the greatest, like even deeper levels of grief and disconnection when I'm hiding from the fact that I'm being called higher, when I'm ignoring or pretending not to see that there's a higher calling for my life that I'm being asked to express. And so I will take the pain of exposure and vulnerability of going after your visions and choosing to actually express the things that you really care about into the world, because I believe it adds meaning to my life and hopefully others too. Like, coming from that intention creates, I think, just so much more polarity and juxtaposition in the width and like breadth of feelings that you can feel, because you're fully alive, you're in the game, you're participating, versus succumbing to the numbness that I think so much of this world is succumbing to, like the robots and the phones and the ignoring, the hiding, the pretending, I think we need to remember our aliveness. I think we need to remember to stay awake to our life, and that we are here for a reason. Like, I always see that Like there's a 1 in bajillion chance that your cells got formulated for you to exist in this body. And so God has you here on purpose. And there is some way, regardless of if you believe in all that, like there is some way that you can contribute to making your life and the lives of people around you a little bit better. And that's how the world gets better, is when we choose to act in those directions. And I don't act perfectly in those directions every single day. I really don't. I am grumpy and gloomy on some days, more than others, but like the more it's about the coming back. It's about coming back to the remembrance of the meaning that we're capable of creating. We don't need to know the ins and outs of the higher meanings of everything, but we get to choose to create that meaning for ourselves and stand in that conviction of knowing that we can make things just 1% better by choosing to follow the callings of our soul and express that in the world. And so I just care about all of us being alive in this moment. And I think it's a gift that we shouldn't take for granted. And I think we have the ability to create in the directions of our dreams and allow that to inform others on what they're capable of as well. And there's so much destruction. I've heard so much about the inverse relationship between destruction and creation recently. There's so much destruction in the world that it takes a certain level of dropping back into presence to choose to create in positive directions. And I think what we create can inform the direction of the world. I think art spreads ripple effects. I think our expression in all facets spreads ripple effects of permission, of expansion, of like expanding our minds on what's possible. And it takes people who are so dropped into their purpose that can choose to express that meaning in the world in a way that provides that ripple effect of expansion and possibility for others who witness their work as well. And I'm not going to say it's not vulnerable or it's not scary or all the things, because it's all of that. And then you get to do it anyways. And then you get to be here and you get to be human and you get to keep going and keep coming back to yourself. And regardless of the bigness of the success or the accolades, like the relationship you're always gonna have is with yourself and with God and with the people around you. And so how can we create deeper meaning and purpose in all of those relationships? This is long as fuck. Did I want this to be this long? This is a whole podcast. 2024 was a trip. And I don't have a shorter version of this video right now, so